Welcome to Bluebell Storytime Online. I'm Mandi Cantrell from the B.B. Comer Library in Sylacauga, Alabama. Today we're going to do some royal reading. I'm going to read stories about a princess and a king, and we're going to talk about knights. So let me tell you the first book. It is The Princess and the Pea. You may know that story. It's a great one, though. A long time ago, there lived a prince who was looking for someone very special to marry. But that someone had to be a real princess. The prince met lots of young ladies who wanted to marry him. Some of them were very pretty, some were very rich, and some were very smart. But none of them was a real princess, and so he kept looking and hoping and yearning. The prince wore out his shoes dancing with all the eligible young ladies. He wore himself out going to parties with them, and he talked with them until he was so tired that he couldn't talk anymore. But still, he couldn't find a real princess. Perhaps, said the king, there are no more real princesses. Maybe, said the queen, all the real princesses have already found their princes. Besides, dear son, you know you are very, very picky. And so it went. More parties and dances and conversations for another year, until one night in the middle of a ferocious thunderstorm, there was a knock at the door of the castle. The king was up late. The thunder had awakened him, you'd see, and so he went to the door. Outside stood a young woman. She was soaking wet. Please give me shelter, she implored. The worried king asked how she came to be alone in the night. My family and I were traveling through the forest. It was so dark and stormy that we lost each other. I walked until I saw the light in the castle. By now the queen, too, had awakened. She took the young woman with her to a guest room to give her dry clothing and to settle her in for the night. Who is your family? Asked the queen. I am a king's daughter, though you wouldn't know it to look at me, the young woman said. Indeed, her clothes were torn and muddy, and her face was weary from traveling. Thought the queen. We'll soon see if she's a real princess. Real princesses are very, very sensitive. And so the queen called the maids and the footmen and ordered them to bring 20 mattresses and 20 feather comforters to the bedroom. Just stack them up high, she told them. We want our guest to be comfortable after her ordeal. While a warm bath was being prepared, the servants piled up mattresses and feather comforters until they nearly reached the ceiling. Then they set a ladder next to the bed so their guests could climb up. After the servants left, the queen took one small green pea that she had gotten from the kitchen and tucked it as far under the bottom mattress as her arm could reach. When the young visitor was ready for bed, the queen helped her climb the ladder to the top of the stack of mattresses and comforters, blew out the candle, and wished her a good night and pleasant dreams. In the morning, when the young woman awoke and joined the royal family for breakfast, the queen asked her how she had slept. Oh, I barely slept a wink last night, she replied. I must have strained my back in the forest because it felt like I was sleeping on a stone and not on the stack of mattresses and feather comforters that you prepared for me. The queen knew at once that this must be a real princess. She wanted to tell her son about her test, but she could not get his attention. He was gazing lovingly into the eyes of the princess, and she into his, and they were both smiling. After breakfast, the king showed the princess around the castle while his men searched the forest for her family to bring them safely to the shelter of the palace. When the queen was finally alone with the prince, she said to him, I think she's the one, son. Then she told him about placing the pea under the stack of their guests' mattresses. Only a real princess would have felt a pea in that bed, she said. Thank you, mother, said the prince, but I didn't need a pea to tell me she's a real princess. I could see it in the gentleness of her eyes, hear it in the softness of her voice, and feel it in the kindness of her heart. And so the prince and the princess were married. Now you might be asking, whatever became of the pea? Well, some say the pea was put into a museum. Others say the pea was cooked in the prince and princess's wedding soup. But still others say the queen kept it to remind herself of her son's wisdom in recognizing his real princess. Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, I want you to join me now. You know, every king and princess and queen, they always have knights that help them with the castle. So we're going to do a little song about 5 little knights. All right, you ready? 5 little knights, fearless and brave, went dragon hunting deep in a cave. They heard a loud roar, shaking the cave's floor, and one little knight ran away. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 little knights, fearless and brave, went dragon hunting deep in a cave. They heard a loud roar, shaking the cave's floor, and one little knight ran away. All right, 3 left. 3 little knights, fearless and brave, went dragon hunting deep in a cave. They heard a loud roar, shaking the cave's floor, and one little knight ran away. Now just 2. 2 little knights, fearless and brave, went dragon hunting deep in a cave. They heard a loud roar, shaking the cave's floor, and one little knight ran away. 1 little knight, fearless and brave, went dragon hunting deep in a cave. He heard a loud roar, shaking the cave's floor, and this little knight ran away. Ah, and there's the dragon that was making the loud roar. Great, thank you for doing that. Good job. All right, the next book I want to read is called The King of Little Things, and this is by Bill Lepp. This is a great story, I think. Long ago, on the far side of a mountain, lived the king of little things. While other kings busied themselves with the big things of this world, he happily ruled over all things small. He was king of coins, candles, combs, keys, knots, nods, knobby knees, bottles, buttons, beetles, burps, chiggers, chips, chickadee chirps, petals, paddles, paper clips, lamp wicks, lentils, lizard lips, mittens, marbles, macaroni, barnacles, bats, and fried bologna. The king of little things had a cozy house and a loving queen. He fed the birds, left crumbs for the ants, and planted flowers for the bees. He had everything he needed and didn't want for more. Not so with bigger kings. No matter how vast their kingdoms, they always wanted more. Bigger riches, bigger bridges, bigger breeches. Greediest of all was King Normus. He wanted to be king of all the world. With this in mind, he gathered an army, a big army. He raided realms, he squashed sovereignties, he eradicated empires. When he was certain he had conquered every king, queen, czar, empress, chieftain, Raja, and Sultan in the world, it was time for some magnificent merrymaking. He ordered his cooks to fix a fabulous feast. He commanded his goldsmith to create a colossal crown. He instructed his tailors to sew a splendid suit. At last, proclaimed King Normus, as he lifted the glittering crown from its velvet cushion, I am king of all things. His steward raised a trembling hand. I beg your pardon, your highness of great heft. What is it? Snapped the king. My large liege, whimpered the steward. I believe you may have missed his minuscule majesty, the king of little things. Little things have a king, howled Normus. What nonsense! Everyone knows that little things exist only to serve big things. King Normus stroked his beard. Where lives this king of little things? He growled. Through the old forest on the far side of a mountain, my considerable sire, said his servant. Amass my armies, Normus cried. We shall go there immediately and put this tiny king in his very small place. After marching for days, King Normus and his armies at last neared the land of the King of Little Things. This would not be a fair fight, and that's just the way the big king liked it. As the enemy approached, the King of Little Things sent a message to his subjects. He had a plan, and he needed their help. And during the night, the little things went to work. The next morning, the soldiers found mealworms in their bread, chiggers in their underpants, and fungus between their toes. Worse yet, there was nothing left to fight with. Termites had made dust heaps of their arrow shafts, water droplets had worked their way into their gunpowder, and rust had ruined the cannons and catapults. In a royal rage, King Normus called for his council. If we cannot defeat this king through might, he roared, then clearly we must trick him. We must cheat him. We must lie. After all, a lie, no matter how small, is never a little thing, Normus said to his advisors. Invite this charlatan to my tent under a flag of truce and prepare the dungeon. The instant the King of Little Things entered the tent, Small Things recognized their master and fell at his feet. Coins rolled out of the big king's coffers. Jewels jumped from his crown. Buttons popped from his suspenders. Normus stood in his underwear before the entire court. Take this puny pretender to the castle, he shrieked, and toss him in the dungeon. The soldiers tried, but the dungeon keys were loyal to the King of Little Things. They would not turn the lock. The nails recognized their king and sprang from the door to bow before him. When Normus learned of this, he had the little king taken to the deepest, darkest cavern in the land. He ordered the entrance sealed with a stone, a big stone. Life in the cave was not entirely unpleasant. Ants brought crumbs, birds brought seeds, and bees brought honey. But the King of Little Things missed his house, he missed his garden, and he missed his queen. He sent a message with the ants, birds, and bees. He respectfully asked little things everywhere to make themselves known. The little things loved their king, and they obeyed. All over the world, small things began to happen. Strings unstrung, hangers unhung, doors closed, campfires froze, frills unfrilled, pickles undilled, quills quivered, and pencils shivered. Bolts bolted, brakes jolted, cookies crumbled, blocks tumbled, ticks and tocks left their clocks. Boats listed, words twisted, lights unlit, scarves unknit, and every little thing everywhere refused to work. The people stormed Normus's castle and demanded that he release the prisoner. Abandoned by his armies, the once mighty king had little choice. So the King of Little Things returned home. The little things went back to work. And King Normus? Well, he spent the rest of his days looking for his keys, his spectacles, his pocket watch, his socks, his wallet, his hairnet, and he never thought about little things in the same way again. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed these stories. I want you to keep a check on our Facebook page. We're having summer reading programs online for you to view anytime you want during the week. So just look, there's 2 new ones every week and a story time. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again.